Very rad. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you want your water, baby?
Yeah, I'm gonna take a quick sip of water. I like. Yeah.
Just put it here in case.
Good call.
All right. You okay?
Yeah, I'm good.
Are you?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Welcome to. Wait a minute. Like, what are we doing today? Okay. Welcome to Your Highness Podcast. I'm your host, Diana. Am I your host, Diana? I didn't even say that correctly. All right, let me start over. Welcome to Your Highness Podcast. I'm your host, Diana.
And I'm your co-host, JR.
You're my co-host, not their co-host.
I'm still here for them.
All right. So anyway, moving on. This is Your Highness Podcast. I'm Diana. You're JR. We're the host. So we have a recurring segment which we start every episode with. It's our icebreaker segment called Fave Pot, Fave Not Pot. So if you haven't listened before, it's where we talk about our favorite cannabis-related item at the moment and our favorite non-cannabis-related items. So I'm actually going to start, even though I let you start first last week.
Last week I did get to start first because you were still thinking of yours, well.
Way to blow up my spot, jeez.
Well, hopefully they listened to last week.
So I did bring visuals, but if you're listening, it doesn't really matter. But if you are watching, I recently got a disposable vape pen by Edie Parker. I'm a big fan of this line. This particular strain is called Maui Mango. And if you're watching, I brought the packaging because it's super cute. I didn't bring the actual item because we're not in our house. And yeah, I'd be using it if I had it here. So anyway, even though it's labeled a sativa, it is really high in limonene and beta-caryophyllene and myrcene. So I really like it. It doesn't make me hyped up or, on edge like sativas can do, even though that's all a myth, right? Whatever. Anyway.
Well, not necessarily a myth, but yeah.
No, but it is based on the terpenes.
Yes.
And
other cannabinoids.
And the cannabinoids.
Yes.
Yeah, the cannabinoids. Sorry, I'm not making fun of people who talk about cannabinoids and terpenes. I was just joking. It is important to know that information. And one thing I do know is that I really like limonene. It's good for me. Pretty much any time of day, I think. But anyway, so what's your fave pot right now?
Well, this is really awkward because my favorite pot is cannabinoids and terpenes.
Stop it.
No, I'm just joking. No, mine is actually, it's a strain. It's a CBD dominant strain. It's called ACDC. It is more of a sativa line. But, all right, let's just rewind for a second. Everyone knows that I'm anxious. I talk about it literally like
Everyone
almost
knows it.
like I talk about it like every episode.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm an anxious person, so I like this. So yeah, I'm an anxious person, and I like to get relief from that during the day as well, not just night. But I am also someone that very much does not like to lose focus and concentration and just generally how I am. I do have control issues when it concerns how I am and how I'm acting and just my cognitive abilities. So with this, it allows me that daytime relief. It gives a little bit of a relaxed quality to the mind, but it also gives some focus, which is something that I do desperately need. I've talked about in the past about how I've had difficulties in finding something that is beneficial towards helping me relieve ADHD symptoms. So this is something that I can consume during the day. It's not going to get me all bonked out, and it does allow me to have that nice focus and that relaxation. So if you're someone that wakes up in the morning, feeling anxious already, but you're about to go to work and you don't want to necessarily show up to work stoned or high, then something like this could actually be something that's really great because you're able to function the same exact way as you would to. It just kind of eases those edges a little bit. So it is AC/DC. A lot of times in Maryland, you'll find it crossed in a 1-to-1 with a different, more THC-driven strain to give it that more 1-to-1 on its own. It's primarily all CBD. So definitely look for something that is ratioed with AC/DC if that's something you think you would enjoy.
Sounds like it. Sounds like something I would enjoy.
Yeah, I think everyone would.
So my Fave Not Pot, surprise, surprise, is another podcast. I'm just going to run with that theme right now. And,
go for it.
You know, end of year lists are coming out, favorite podcast of the year and all that, and we will have one on our Substack, which we'll talk about in a second. But my Fave Not Pot right now is a podcast called The Bitchuation Room. And the host of it is Francesca Fiorentini, and it's a political podcast. She's hilarious, though. She's a comedian, but she's also extremely politically active. You know, she has a lot of deep dives about what's going on in the world. And she also is a guest on Piers Morgan, right?
Piers Morgan.
I don't know why I keep wanting to say Pierce Bronson. That's not.
It's definitely not Pierce Bronson.
Nope. But she goes on his show often, and it's funny because she's always like the one that is going against the rest of his guests, and she does a lot of like analysis after the fact, which is really funny to watch and listen to if you only listen to it. But she basically does a play-by-play, like, this is why I said that, and this is why, you know. I'm a big fan of her as a person, and her husband, Matt Lieb, who is also a podcaster and comedian. But I'm getting distracted. I digress. If you're really into political podcasts and humor, I think you'll like The Bitchuation Room. So
I like it. I like it myself.
Oh, yeah. So I'm not recommending anything new to you. No, we watch your show together.
Yeah, we watch your show together.
So what's your Fave Not Pot right now?
My Fave Not Pot, and I'm bringing this up because even though the first season is older, a new season is about to come out. It's a television program on Apple TV called Silo. It stars Rebecca Ferguson, who has become one of my favorite actresses since seeing her in Dr. Sleep, which is the sequel to The Shining. She plays Rose the Hat.
Things we have not watched together.
But Silo, it's an amazing show. It's geared more on a sci-fi edge. It takes place in the future, where essentially the air that people breathe on the surface of Earth is poisoned. So basically, people are living in a silo, and it's set up as a structure where the most important and affluential people in the silo live closer to the top. And as you go down level by level by level, you'd decrease in what they view as importance until you get all the way down to the bottom, and that's the engine room, which the people working in the engine room are viewed on a very low level. They're not really thought very highly of at all, but they are literally the ones that are basically keeping everything running and going. And as a form of punishment, if someone was to break a crime, they would have to then go out of the silo and then die because the air is poisoned. And it really kind of delves mostly into the storyline is a sheriff who is in a relationship with Rebecca Ferguson, starts thinking that things are shady about what's happening in the outside world, and is ultimately murdered. So she's trying to discover why he was murdered and what actually is going on. And it's just a really nice, strong look at basically social constructs and manipulation and control, and that desire for people in charge to maintain that status quo, and the struggles that can happen when fighting against said status quo. So it's called Silo. It's on Apple TV. Season 1 has already aired, and I believe Season 2 airs either towards the end of this year or possibly January. So definitely watch that first season before you jump into the second season.
All right, well, I will not take your recommendation on that because it doesn't sound like something I want to watch. But anyway.
I think you would like it if you opened your mind a little bit.
I'm kidding. I'll probably watch it with you. All right. So before we move on to our main segment, a couple of announcements. So if you have yet to check out our Substack that I mentioned just a few minutes ago, we would really love it if you do that because we don't just talk about our episodes on there, even though you will get some of that. Mm-hmm. But we also have, something really cool coming out from you very soon.
Yeah.
We have recipes. We will have some really cool videos on how to do things like grow your own cannabis at home, make your own salve. We also have other guest posts on there, and I forgot what else I was going to say about it. So anyway, just check it out. Your Highness Media is what it's called. It's free, so you can subscribe for free. Just go on Substack, search for Your Highness Media, but we'll also link to it in the show notes. It's a really good place to keep up with what we're doing because we also have another podcast, in case you don't know, and it's called Getting Personal with Plant Medicine. So we post a lot of content around that, but we also try to make it more interactive, and we would love to include listeners in a lot of ways in the future. So, I mean, it seems to be the best way to kind of do that without the hindrances of social media, because if you post any kind of cannabis-related content, you know that it's so limited on social media, and we're not able to post all of the things that we want to because of that. So Substack is really cool. Right now, at least. Right now. And it is actually starting to kind of move into a social media type of a platform where you can post notes and things like that. It's kind of like Instagram meets Threads in a way. Well, Instagram meets Threads, that's not a good... The Instagram Threads is, it's kind of like Twitter,
like Tumblr a little bit. Yeah, the old days of Tumblr.
Yeah, old days of Tumblr. And I found a lot of really cool accounts on there, really great reading material. I mean, it's a great place to be right now.
And a great place to build community.
Yeah,
which is something we are all about.
Yes. So please check that out if you have not. And one more thing before we begin, we will be having an event on November 18th. From 6 to 8 p.m. And so if you live in the Bel Air area of Maryland, or Harford County, Maryland, or Baltimore County, and you feel like taking a little drive, we will be exploring the topic of pets and plant medicine, CBD and functional mushrooms. So there will be a lot of giveaways, a lot of learning, and probably a lot of meeting cool new people. Yeah. So, yeah, check us out. Check us out if you're in the area. All right, so today we're going to talk about...
We are going to talk about the thrilling subject of mortgages and loans.
Hey, thrilling. We used to do that for a living. Yeah. Professionally, we should probably say before we even begin, I have a background in another lifetime, and so do you, in mortgages and real estate, so... We're not just we're not just rambling in this one. I'm just joking.
But it is. I mean, it's an important topic, and it's something that we've actually talked about briefly. A little peppered into other segments. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to start off. This was a post that was on LinkedIn by Megan. I believe her last name is Dobro. It's Dobro, and I do apologize if you're listening and or watching, and I butchered your last name. I have a last name that is constantly butchered, so I understand if you are frustrated if I got your last name completely wrong. But getting back to the post, she writes, I was denied a mortgage today. I have a current mortgage with the same lender and have never missed a payment. I have excellent credit. The reason? As your business is licensed by the Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission, you will not be eligible for financing with us. A few months ago, my credit card account that I've had for over a decade was shut down with no explanation. I never missed a payment. I'm tired. If I knew in 2019 what it would feel like to start a lab in the cannabis industry, to be treated like a criminal both by the Cannabis Control Commission itself and the outside institutions I depend on for my family's success, well, I won't finish that sentence because I chose a path and there is no going back. And I can tell you from firsthand that this is a legitimate situation that happens. We've talked in the past about how certain day-to-day things just in life that general people take for granted.
Or people that don't work in cannabis.
Take for granted.
People that, I'd say, not to cut you off, but just to kind of, belabor the point. It's something that people don't think, people who aren't in the industry, they don't understand that it's a constant bane of our existence, because they think, well, it's becoming legal pretty much everywhere, so why would it be such an issue in your life?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people think that, especially as these states open up, it becomes more normalized, especially since we start seeing states going from medical programs to adult use programs. They're assuming like, oh, this is any other kind of industry with the same ins and outs. They'll get paychecks, they get taxes taken out, they can get insurance if they are with a big enough company. But they don't realize the nuance behind a lot of that. A lot of times companies actually need to kind of work under like a shell company, an umbrella company, in order to be able to provide those things. And when it comes to banking, there are many banks that will actually refuse to do business with anybody related to the cannabis industry. I myself have had employees that have had their bank accounts shut down because the bank realized that their direct deposit was coming in from a cannabis company. Denied loans. I had someone that was trying to buy a house that got all the way until the very end of the process when they were basically going to close, and the processor was like, wait a minute, we can't work with this. This is income coming from a cannabis company.
Yep.
And actually suggested, can you hurry up and just find another job? They had excellent credit. They had money for the down payment. They had everything in line. The only thing was that one detail of them working in the cannabis industry. So they were basically presented with either we can not go through with this, or you can, in the next month, find another job that we can then use and say that is where your income is coming from.
And I don't even think that would work, because you need a certain amount
of time, but I guess they were just trying to grasp at straws at that point.
Well, to get more specific about it, okay, it's not impossible to have a mortgage if you work in the cannabis industry. However, if you have an FHA or a VA or a USDA-backed mortgage, which is a lot of them.
It's a federal-backed mortgage.
Right. A state, correct. The government-backed mortgages have strict guidelines. So they view income from a cannabis industry as ineligible due to the federal classification as Schedule 1. So what that means is the only way you're able to get a loan without any kind of worry, and it's still, you still might have a lot of hiccups, are conventional loans, which means you have to put down a lot more money. And here's the catch. Even if you do have a conventional loan, it's not guaranteed that you're allowed to use your down payment if you can't prove that that money came from something that wasn't cannabis related. So if you own any part of a cannabis business and the funds that are obtained from that business, it cannot be used for closing costs or a down payment. So, yeah, I'm going to even get a little bit more specific about it. So it says Fannie Mae's underwriting allows marijuana dispensary employees to qualify for conforming loans as long as the income is not illegal under state or local law, and the borrower has no interest in ownership of the entity, and the employee receives a W-2. But, like I said, if you do own any of that business, the funds that are obtained from that business can't be used for a down payment for closing costs. So it's like yeah, okay, you have some type of an option, but I mean, you have to get very, I don't want to say tricky because I'm not advocating mortgage fraud. I'm just saying that you have to become very creative. I mean, as a former loan processor, I know what I'm saying here because there are ways that you have to kind of package the loan and all of that so that it's more attractive to the lenders. But the big but of it is that a lot of people in this space do not receive a W-2. And also, their money is coming from something where they may own an entity or may own part of the entity because if you're doing some type of a stock.
I was just about to say that. Yeah. So many companies, because while not all cannabis companies obviously are traded on the New York Stock Exchange, many of them are going through Canada and will offer stock incentives to their employees if they're a large enough company. And that can basically classify as ownership. You know, if you are cashing out some of those stocks in order to make a down payment on the house, or even if they can trace any of that money back to that organization, that could cause some turbulation. I'm not saying it's not going to go through, but it does create more difficulty in the process as a whole through those stocks.
And even just trying to get paid, period. Well, you know, I mean, I know we're talking about loans, but banking falls in that as well. And I did mention Substack earlier, but the thing about Substack is that they only have one payment processor, Stripe. And they shut me out of being able to monetize because we mentioned CBD. They didn't even they didn't even care that I'm not plant touching in any kind of a way. Just because we talk and write about CBD, not even cannabis, just CBD was their reason. They said even CBD.
Well, a big thing too, especially when it comes to banking, is you have to realize that it's still federally Schedule I. So our ability to operate and run business is basically solely dictated on who is in office at that time and who that administration has as a cabinet. A lot of people operate off the Cole memo that happened during the Obama years and assume that was just we're always going to run with this.
Right.
Not realizing a lot of people have forgotten that, you know, that Jeff Sessions, when he was Attorney General, was planning on going after cannabis companies. Got sidetracked on some other things, but it's solely dependent. It's not law. It's not federally legal. Nor, in my belief, is it going to be federally legal anytime soon. So, you know, yet again, you really want to make sure that you're going out there and making your voice heard, doing your thing in November, because it's dictated on who is in office as to how we're able to move forward in this industry. But no matter who is in office, until we have that full-scale descheduling, which, yet again, I do not foresee happening anytime in the immediate future, just because it would disrupt so much. Yet again, going back to my favorite Not Pot, you know, that manipulation that occurs and control that occurs to maintain that status quo, there's a lot of retribution that would need to happen to folks that have been penalized and punished due to it being Scheduled I, that I don't think that the federal government's really ready to kind of give that up yet. So
we have had some attempts, I should say. Not
we've
to
had
cut
some,
you off. Safe banking. That is something that has been, but
it hasn't gone through yet.
It hasn't gone through, and there has been so many. What are the words? Like, people are taking away from it and putting it back. You know, people have amended it so much that it isn't something that is extremely equitable for everyone involved.
Yeah,
it's not a blanket answer. It's not going to create opportunities for everyone.
No, and I think a lot of it also comes down to, you know, putting that onus onto employers. A lot of us who have been in the industry since 2016 to 2019 have been going on a long way. We kind of knew what we were getting into. We came in at a time when most people were just kind of paid cash at the end of the day, and it was a strict cash business. And while we did hope that we could move forward into an area in which that could be alleviated through things like the Fair Banking Act and stuff like that, we knew what we were getting into. But a lot of these newer people coming in, I've seen people leave very strong, successful careers to get into cannabis, not fully realizing exactly what they were stepping into. And sometimes those employers weren't incredibly transparent about what they were getting into. I know that I spoke with a manager of a dispensary recently. Within the past couple months, I was training them, and this was something that was actually brought up during her interview. And the person that interviewed her told her that everything was going to be fine. There's no issues at all. It's just like a normal industry. She left her very successful job, came into the cannabis industry, and quickly found the difficulties in getting something as simple as a car loan in her circumstance. So this is a legitimate thing that is happening. This isn't something that we can sweep under the rug and say, oh, this is 2024, most states are legal, we're doing adult use now, everything is fine.
Right. I mean, if you even just Google cannabis industry plus mortgages, there are a ton of articles like this recent one from Business Insider that profiles several different people who were unable to close on their homes. Like, they mentioned someone who was a CEO of a Massachusetts-based company, and him and his wife were trying to buy a home. They were less than a week before they were supposed to close. They were denied. Mm-hmm. And like I said before, we both have a lot of experience in mortgages. And that can happen even if you have an approval or a pre-approval. Even if they say everything looks good, things can happen. I've had it happen at the closing table, and unfortunately, these people had already sold their other home. So they were scrambling, and they wound up having to remove his name and put it in his wife's name, and they had to stay in a hotel for a few weeks. And they had to pay extra to start the process all over again. And I'm sure it made their debt to income ratio higher, because when you can't prove that you have, more income, it usually pushes you into, especially with conventional mortgages, private mortgage insurance. If you aren't able to put as much down because you can't prove that all that money isn't from a cannabis business. And I should also say that this is not always going to be an issue for every single person, because there are, anomalies. You'll meet people that'll say, oh, never been a problem for me. I mean, just earlier we talked about the Stripe issue with Substack, and there are a couple of people who have very popular Substacks on there that talk about cannabis, and they have no issue with Stripe. They fought back, and Stripe said, sure, monetize. I fought back for months, and they just told me unequivocally, literally said that they were not going to change their mind.
And I think that's, where we are at the industry right now is, and that's on a realm of so many different things, whether it comes to financing, to childcare, to so many things, is it's this giant gray area. It's an unknown. So you can't specifically say, oh, you're good, oh, you're not good, because it's solely dependent on each individual. I've worked with many people that didn't have problems with banking, and then I had two people, and these aren't high-level employees, these are entry-level bud tenders coming in, and they happen to basically just have their bank accounts, shut down on them. They were informed, you have 3 weeks to remove your money from our bank and get another bank. You're no longer allowed to bank with us, especially things like credit unions. You have this younger generation, maybe they're a part of a credit union because their family was connected to that credit union. Credit unions can be amazing. There's so many benefits to being a part of a credit union.
Not to cut you off, I was going to say there are a lot of credit unions who advertise that they can help people with cannabis. So,
but yet again, not all.
But and I feel like there is no real guarantee with that, because if you're getting like we just talked about, a federally backed loan, then you don't know what could happen, and anything can change at the last minute. So even if they are saying, oh, we'll give it to you, that is not a guarantee.
Yeah.
It's just not.
So yet again, it's just gray area. We're not saying that you're not going to have a hard time. You could have a very easy time, but there needs to be that transparency that it is a possibility that you could run into extreme difficulties when trying to get a loan or even bank with a checking account.
Yeah.
You know, there is that possibility. Much like we've talked in the past with things like CPS about there is no guarantee.
Right.
You know, where we stand right now, there is no guarantee on anything. A lot of banks, they won't want to jump behind it because it's federally scheduled one. They don't want to run that risk of all their assets being seized because they're holding money that is deemed illegal by the federal government. So you just
need transparency. And we need transparency from these big companies, but they're not going to give it because if they meet you at the interview and say, okay, well, these are all of the job requirements, and also it could keep you from getting a mortgage. It could keep you from getting other jobs. It could keep you from having your credit card. It could also affect your child care, possibly, you know, depending on where your child is being, you know, taken care of. There's so many different things that it could impact. But why would they say that? Because then it would position the potential employee to say, well, are we going to be paid more?
Yeah,
Will I get more
the compensation behind
Will I get more benefits? You know, are you going to, I don't know, pay for childcare or pay above what the average is for this job? And the answer is no, they will not. Yeah. So when you see these posts out there saying like, join the cannabis industry, it's so exciting and new and there's so much potential. Take a huge grain of salt, like a boulder of salt with that, because there are so many things that are not being said. And yeah, it is exciting to be a part of something new, but it's not really new. Yeah. So that's not really the selling point. The only real reason you want to be in this industry, or I shouldn't say, I don't know what your reason is, but the only reason that's driving a lot of people I talk to and ourselves is that
it's the passion.
We believe in this plant.
Yeah.
We do think it can change the world. But
you need to know what you're getting into, because it's not going to be an easy road. Much like anything that is new, it's not an easy road.
It doesn't matter if you don't touch the plant. You know what I mean? Because I think that's the other issue that is like a big misconception, that people think, well, I don't grow it. I don't sell it. I'll be fine. Like I said earlier, I only write about it and talk about it, and I've lost gigs because of it. I've lost the ability to monetize because of it, and I've dealt with other issues, and you've dealt with other issues, but you actually have dealt with the selling of it, not me, but what I mean is ancillary businesses are no safer in this regard, and ancillary, I can never say that right. Ancillary, ancillary, whatever. Anyway, you know what I mean. So, did you want to add anything more to that?
No, I'm good. Just that people know what they're getting into.
Yes, just, enter this industry with your eyes wide open and, remove those rose-colored glasses, as we keep saying. Yeah. All right. Well, if that's it, I guess we will end it here.
Sounds like a good place to end.
Okay. Until next time, stay high and beautiful.
I still don't have a catchphrase.
Okay. Is that going to be your thing every time?